So welcome. This is one of few Science Ki Dunya's podcast or introductions or interviews which are conducted in English. And today we have a great privilege to have Dievofaرینا. If you, and I know that in Pakistan, a lot of people use YouTube to educate themselves a lot. And a lot of time people have told me, and I know that too, that there's such a small little topic and pops a video of a guy saying, Professor Dave explains. That is that Professor Dave. And Dave, we are very glad that you joined us today. But I want to start, first of all, with a very sincere apology to you. 2 years ago, I reached out to you for this exact interview. And then a lot happened. I don't want to get into that. Facebook closed our group. We went through a lot of, and then I just lost track of it. But the good thing is, after 2 years when I reached back to you, I reread the book again. So it was twice the fun. So it was quite a lot. So that said, Dave, welcome to the group. And I would want Kadir Qureshi. And one thing I'll just tell you that in Pakistan, as a sign of respect, we always add a word, Sahib. That means Mr. So I'll ask Kadir Sahib to introduce the group to you and start the conversation. Sir, please.
Thank you. First of all, Dave, thank you very much for giving us time. I know that you have been doing great service to people all over the world, especially English-speaking people, by teaching them how to think about science and also, debunking pseudoscience. We have been trying to do the same thing. The audience is a little bit different because we are targeting, people in Pakistan, and you probably know that the language of communication in Pakistan, our national language is Urdu. So most of our content is in Urdu, and even in this video, when we post on our YouTube channel as well as on our Facebook, I'll summarize this in Urdu so that people who don't speak English, they can also understand, and hopefully we'll have subtitle in Urdu as well. But the group is called Science Ki Dunya, which means the word of science, right? And we have been running this group for almost like 12 years now. There are actually two groups because Gerard probably told you that there was a time when our group was banned by Facebook for reasons that had nothing to do with us. But at that time, we opened a second group. And so when we got back the original group, we decided to keep both groups just in case, we lose one, So combined viewership or membership of these two groups is about, at this point, is about 1.3 million. So we have quite a good reach. I have been writing a lot of articles. Gerard Saab has been writing a lot of articles. Hassan does a great job when we do podcasts. Hassan is doing PhD in physics. So whenever there are questions about physics, he is nice enough to give us his time and answer those questions. Gerard Saab himself is very, very well versed with physics. I am sort of a journalist, but mostly I spend my time debunking the trash that is creationism, right? Or anti-evolutionary propaganda. So I spend a lot of time doing that. But the topics are in our group are broader than that, right? All science, physics, a little bit of chemistry because a lot of people probably don't. Chemistry is not a very popular subject. Physics, cosmology, biology, these are popular subjects. So these are the topics which we cover the most. But we have started a YouTube channel. We are trying to expand our social media footprint. So we have TikTok, we have other channels, and the attempt we are trying to do is to reach as many kids as we can and educate them on science. So with that, Gerard Saab, back to you.
Thank you very much. So I'll start with Dave. So you want to say something? Please go ahead, and then we'll
just like about what I do or
anything.
Yes.
Anything you want to.
Sure.
Right.
So what is, first of all, let's just start it. So you know that we address Pakistan community. What do you know of Pakistan? And as earlier we were discussing, there's a great physicist from Pakistan, and you had a strange experience today. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, I know next to nothing about Pakistan. I mean, I could point it out on a map, but I don't think I could tell you too much.
That's already better than a lot of Americans.
Sure, yeah. No, I noticed that a lot of Americans are very bad with geography. I've always been very good with geography since I was a little kid. Even when I was like 8 or 9, I could point out, 90% of the countries on the map. But so I know where it is. But and then this morning I posted a video introducing my newest mini-series on particle physics, and somebody left a comment saying the only Pakistani to get a Nobel Prize worked in this field is Abdus Salam, which I do mention in the series when I talk about electroweak theory. That will come up. So that's your guys' big guy. And then you were telling me a little bit about some of the discrimination that he had experienced. Which is unfortunate.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple of things. It's very, I have been living in the US for 30 years, and Kadir has been living more than me. And by the way, Hassan just joined. Hassan is a PhD student in Albany, Hassan?
Yeah, SUNY Albany.
Yeah. So a lot of, it's very odd that in Pakistan, whenever I go, people think that US is an extremely scientific, literate society, right? And US people think that Pakistan is very backward, and in many ways it is. But one thing that I really love about the community in Pakistan is they're very much interested in science. And what happened is, due to that, a lot of charlatans, right, sell their stuff to them, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is we fight more or less same battles that you do in different language and different things. So one of the biggest challenge that we are facing these days is when I started doing science popularization, it was so that a fringe guy in office who talks about flat earth or nonsense like that, we can just counter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now the time has come where those fringe people in the shape of RFK are sitting in the place where they can influence policy. They're in the cabinet. And not only that influences this society, I don't know if you know that what this society does in the third world countries like Pakistan gets manifold. Oh, they do it over there. So this is how this thing is. So I wanted to catch your views on the impact of pseudoscience in modern US society, what our role should be, and what you are doing, and what we should be doing. Please.
Yeah. It's an excellent question, and obviously this is what I have been thinking about the most, because I've been debunking pseudoscience for a little while now, and at first, I think you have a cutout of my book behind you there, and when I wrote that book, I was focusing largely on cultural trends, just confusion that the general public has, often innocent confusions about the definitions of some certain scientific terminology, things like that. It was a little bit more innocent, whereas now, as you just described, pseudoscience has infiltrated the highest positions in the American government. It is no longer some lunatic on a street corner. It is no longer some fringe group, Facebook group full of anti-vax soccer moms. It is the head of the HHS. It cannot be overstated how incredibly dangerous this is, how much this will cost human lives. And so I've pivoted quite a bit. I mean, I'm still debunking many, many things, but I'd say at least half of my debunking efforts have gone towards this realm. So the things that Bobby says, his underlings, Jay Bhattacharya, Vinay Prasad, Marty McCary, all of the people that are immediately under him in his little club, the claims that they make, they have to be exposed, neutralized. These figures have to be ridiculed. They have to be shown to be the absolute and utter unqualified clowns and charlatans that they are. And it has to be done in a way that is very thorough, that leaves no doubt as to their fraudulence. My approach is to also make it as entertaining as I can. I try to inject humor and things like that to encourage people to watch. But we need, pseudoscience has become so mainstream and so institutionalized that there has to be a huge counterculture wave.
I can't hear you. Other people, can you hear?
I can hear him perfectly.
Oh, okay. There has to be a huge counterculture wave based on rational thought, empirical thought, to counter this, because it just culturally, like, the stakes are so high and it's gotten so bad that it just, the gloves have to come off, right? This has to be done with fervor, with a lot of intensity, in big numbers. So I'm doing the best I can, making as much content as I can over here by myself, and I'm noticing a very small kind of, I don't want to maybe say movement, but just like I noticed that I'm influencing some of the people around me, a few of my colleagues, and definitely there's a small base of people who watch my content and get in the trenches with me in the comment section and sort of fight this optics battle. But hopefully this is just the initial stirrings of a very large and broad movement.
So just
turn the tide.
I just wanted to stop you. I wanted my Pakistan audience to understand what RFK's impact is. Just imagine anti-moon landing guy becomes head of NASA.
Right, or a flat earther.
A flat earther becomes head of NASA.
Yes.
The impact that would have is the impact that Dave is talking about.
Yes, I mean, there are people who haven't heard all of his rhetoric in its most insane forms, and they just hear him go, "Oh, we got to make things healthier" or something, and they're like, "Well, what's wrong with that? Healthy?" It's like, that's not his agenda.
Yeah.
He denies the germ theory of disease. I mean, the guy, like, he is on a crusade against all vaccines. He hides behind this rhetoric of, "Oh, I want to save everybody from the evil big pharma." But the narrative just doesn't play, because he gets into power. The first thing he does, massive layoffs, guts CDC, guts FDA, fires the entire vaccine safety panel, replaces it with fraud anti-vaxxers, changes the entire childhood vaccine schedule recommendations that makes the vaccines unavailable to low-income families. And just, this is part of a broader anti-vax movement where it looks to be the case that it will go through, that vaccine mandates for school children in Florida will be repealed. Kids will die. We're seeing an uptick of measles, whooping cough. These diseases are coming back. It's only a handful of deaths at the moment, but it will get worse. It's just like kids are dying, and more kids will die. I don't know, like, what it's going to take to get people angry if dying children isn't enough. But once it starts happening more, maybe that'll snap some people out of it. But this is what's happening.
We have a very similar fight in Pakistan, where, Pakistan is the only country in this world that still has polio patients. Only country, right? So, and one of the main reason in Pakistan anti-vacciners is that government is putting some special medicine in it to make us impotent. Pakistan's population is 300 million. Right? Who wants you to not have a capability of producing more people? So that is what we see. So, however, there's one element that you hit in your discussion, and you discuss that in your book in detail as well. And there are two aspects of it. One is science, another one is corporate pharma, which at times can be two competing things too, right? One, in the corporate world, the goal is to make more and more money, right? Not necessarily to push the correct science as well, right? So sometimes what I see people, anti-vacciners, use the agenda of corporate world to badmouth science as well. So what is your experience of dealing with that? And where can we join these two things and fight? There are two battles we have to fight. One on the... Oh, go ahead, please.
Well, I mean, the first and most obvious thing is to decouple industry from basic scientific knowledge, right? The activities of any industry or corporation do not determine the laws of physics and the laws of right? What is scientifically true is true independent of the activity of any corporation or person or governing body or anything like that. Nobody can change how gravity works or something like that, right? And the same goes for the human body. What a drug is and how it works and why it has efficacy is independent of right. It would have been that way thousands of years ago before science existed, right? The scientific process existed, right? The handful of natural remedies that we stumbled upon in the ancient world had efficacy because of rules of chemistry that we learned later. And so instead of ascribing a magical quality to a plant or something later, we figured out what molecules are, the mechanism of action of any drug, etc. So that's part one. Part two is that the nefariousness that has been painted upon, obviously pharma primarily, is completely misled. To call them profit-driven is obvious. That's just how capitalism works. Literally every single corporation in any sector of capitalism is profit-driven. That's how capitalistic society works. It doesn't make it nefarious, right? That pharma wants to make profitable drugs is why they make effective drugs, right? Drugs can only be profitable if they work, and they only work if they address some need medicinally and offer some solution. Do they have shady tactics in terms of, manipulating something to extend the exclusivity of their patent, or sometimes they bribe doctors to prescribe something slightly off label or something like that? It's not that there's absolutely nothing unethical that could be discussed, but honestly, the behavior of pharma, it doesn't hold a candle to the dangers of the alt health industry and unregulated, untested supplements and things like that. Like, the irony is that these kinds of people who rage against pharma embrace this other industry that is wildly more corrupt and wildly more dangerous and all of these things. And so it's really not about science. It's just about narratives that people enjoy with this anti-establishment bite. Oh, I'm fighting against the big power. Again, the irony is that big supplement is like a $2 trillion industry compared to, $700 billion or something for pharma. So big supplement, the alt health industry is bigger and more profitable than big pharma. So just the inconsistency and the hypocrisy in the approach of a lot of these people, it needs to be pointed out to them. It needs to be shown to their faces.
Sure.
So, Dave, first of all, you mentioned, because of RFK, a lot of people are going to die. So I just wanted to, I'm sure you are aware that there's measles epidemic going on, especially in Texas, and kids are dying. And unfortunately, the government, state government, is just towing the same line that RFK is, projecting. And so it's going to get much worse before it gets better. Yes. But having said that, I wanted to change the subject and go to the topic, which is, very, near and dear to my heart, which is, debunking creationism. You have done some great videos on, debunking different people. But the thing that I am trying to understand is, do you think it's just the religion which is causing people to go with creationism, or do you think it's more than that? What's your sense why people are attracted to creationism?
No, it's 100% due to religious indoctrination. What other explanation could there be? Yeah. It is anti-scientific. It is pseudoscientific to varying degrees. There are varying flavors of creationism. There's the Kent Hovind style preacher, young earth creationist, Noah's Ark 6,000 years ago crap, which is illogical in ways that even a fairly intelligent middle school student would be able to unearth, all the way up to kind of creationism in a tuxedo, Discovery Institute style, more sophisticated propaganda that requires an ability to read the primary scientific literature to debunk. But it all stems from religious fundamentalism. It is all financed by wealthy fundamentalist donors. Right? The Discovery Institute is a Christian propaganda mill. It's funded by wealthy, pro-theocracy donors. And the thing that is very fascinating is that whether it's fundamentalist Christianity or fundamentalist Islam, it's all the same crap. It's all the same arguments. I've noticed that with fundamentalist Islam, they're constantly referencing Discovery Institute and Michael Behe and Stephen Meyer, because it doesn't matter who the God is. The enemy is science. It doesn't matter what your ideology, the specifics of your ideology, as long as you have the common enemy that is science, that debunks fundamentalism in general. And the most sophisticated creationist propaganda ever made, or that I have come across, is Discovery Institute. So that's why I target them so voraciously, because if you can deconstruct that and show how fallacious and how idiotic it is actually, everything beneath it just crumbles, and it's just so ridiculous in comparison. So I have a pretty long series going through every member of that organization. Right.
So just I wanted to interject something.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we have one of the person in our group who writes very regularly about biology. He told me that it's very common for me, whenever somebody posts any creationist thing, I know where they took it. I go to Discovery Institute, then I go to Dave's channel, find the debunk of that, and send them both of the videos. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, unfortunately, usually it's this is why Discovery Institute hates me so much, is if you put in Michael Behe or put in one of their names, my video is number one.
Right.
They cannot stand me over there. It's glorious.
So one of the things that I sort of tell people on Science Ke Dunya, whenever they bring up the creationist quote unquote scientists, right? It's always Michael Behe or a couple of other people, and so I sort of tell them, don't you find it curious that there are probably hundreds of thousands of biologists, if not millions, and out of those you only find references to 3 names who are creationist scientists,
not real scientists also.
Exactly, but they always say, science is not consensus science, because there are scientists who oppose those views also. How do you address that when they say that there's no scientific consensus?
Well, you debunk the hell out of the fallacious claims made by Behe and so forth. You expose their motivations for making them. You just basically take all the steam out of that figure, and then remind the people, and then look at them, as you just said, this million other biologists that all agree on. Like, consensus doesn't mean every single last person in the field. It means the overwhelming majority. Right. And if you've got 99.99% of all biologists agree on the basics of evolutionary biology, then that's the consensus. And so here are the frauds. Here's how we know they're wrong. You debunk their claims thoroughly, and then you expose their motivations. Isn't it interesting how every single figure that is spouting this rhetoric contrary to evolutionary biology happens to be in the pocket of a Christian propaganda organization? Can't you have one? That's why they always try. They had like Gunter Beckley, who they were like, oh, see, I used to be an atheist, but then I read these books by Michael Behe and I became interested in it. No, bullshit. You're totally lying. He's been religious always, it's
right. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to point out is, when we say consensus, it doesn't just mean that there's an overwhelming majority of scientists who agree. It's also that different lines of evidence, which are mutually, independent, they point to the same thing. So it's not just, you found some, fossils, and they say that. Well, there is completely independent verification through DNA channels, right? I mean, DNA didn't have to match the same, tree of life, for example, that you make using fossils. And then there's, geography, there's, geology in general, right? Yes. There is basic science. I mean, you can go to chemistry from biochemistry to chemistry to physics to quantum physics, and it's all consistent, right? And that's something that when I tell people it's consensus, it doesn't necessarily mean that majority of scientists agree. It's also majority of scientific disciplines.
I think that's what's missing, is that people don't understand that the overwhelming majority of scientists agree because the overwhelming majority of the evidence points them to that conclusion. So exactly. The thing is that a lot of anti-science propaganda tries to undermine the essence of empiricism by likening the scientific community to a priesthood with dogma, and they just say that thing because they just want to, because no, it's because this is where the evidence points overwhelmingly. When you have all of genomic data matching flawlessly all of the phylogenetic data, matching flawlessly biogeography and stratigraphy and all these things, this is the conclusion that any rational, educated person would make. And the only type of person who can reject this evidence is someone who is uneducated and does not understand this evidence. So any debunking activity has to be twofold. It has to do as good a job as humanly possible at explaining the evidence to the layperson, and you can't. There are aspects that are too esoteric; they're not going to get it. But with evolutionary biology, you definitely can do it. You can help people understand basic genetics and things like that. So that has to be there. Otherwise, it sounds like an argument from authority. But then it has to do this other thing of just helping people understand, like, scientists are just people. They look at evidence and they come to these conclusions. You are the one that fell for a dogmatic priesthood in believing creationism, and these, like, that is the dogma. They are projecting dogma onto empiricism to try to level the playing field and make it seem like we have a Bible, we have scripture and prophets, and they have scripture and prophets. So which scripture and prophets are you going to choose? It's a false equivalency. These kind of logical fallacies have to be deconstructed and disempowered. So I spend a lot of time doing that as well.
I mean, there's another thing where a lot of people, say, oh, it's just a theory, right? It will be proven false. And they sort of tell you, science changes its mind all the time, so it's just a matter of time. And I tell them, people have been trying, I mean, no other scientific theory has seen the kind of criticism that, theory of evolution has. And people have been trying to disprove this theory for 150 years. And you go back, 100 years, you still find the same statement. Next 10 years, theory of evolution will be proven wrong. Even today, they have the same claim, right? So I tell kids that you have to look at the history also and see if the claims that evolutionists or anti-evolutionists make have been consistently fallen apart. That tells you that, it's not driven by facts, it's driven by some other motivation. And you sort of have to understand what the motivations are. There's also, there is now, I see a movement both in, Christian, creationism, as well as when I see Pakistanis, they are moving from theory of evolution to abiogenesis, because that's where they think that's the gotcha, right? Yeah. And you have done very, very good job debunking, all those claims where now they say, life simply cannot stop, right? And can you maybe elaborate a little bit of, what you have done to sort of debunk that?
Sure. So they only have one guy. Discovery Institute has one guy named James Tour, who they have deemed suitable for pushing creationist rhetoric regarding abiogenesis. And he's their golden horse because he's the only one amongst them who is a working scientist. He's an actively publishing chemist. Does not do any work. It's just so funny. The people who the creationists who champion him call him a biochemist or something. No, he's not. He does material science. He works with graphene and nanocars, and he does perfectly good, legitimate work in that field. Has nothing to do with abiogenesis. He does not understand origin of life research, not even a little bit. It deals with principles in chemistry that he has no familiarity with, and he just fumbles like crazy when he tries to talk about it. But he's their guy that they push, and for about 5 years, I started with one video on him that was very gentle, and then it progressed into this full-fledged rivalry here, I guess, just kind of attacking, and then culminated in a debate, and then he humiliated himself there, and then more so after that in other events. But Yeah, he's the only one that they think makes a convincing case because he's able to use the language of chemistry since he's a chemist. And so, yeah, I took it upon myself to ruin him.
Yes,
and it's been great. So
yeah,
and that's the phenomena where somebody looks like a scientist, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, because he is,
right, but he is. And what I wanted to emphasize is, it doesn't matter what a scientist says, right?
Mm-hmm.
But earlier we were saying, a majority of scientists agrees on the theory of evolution because that's where evidence points.
Yeah.
It doesn't say what 1, 2, or 10 scientists have an opinion about something. It really doesn't matter. Einstein, in all his life, was opposed to quantum mechanics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to an extent. Well, he also is one of the fathers of quantum mechanics.
Yeah, and he also, but we didn't. It doesn't matter what he says.
Sure.
Right?
So, yeah, I mean, so there's a lot there. Yeah, number one, understanding what a theory is, and that it is simply a model that correlates data and makes predictions about phenomena. And so, like, I think the problem with a lot of creationists is that they know deep down that principles of evolutionary biology are so undeniable and demonstrable that we observe evolution on a daily basis. We observe evolution by natural selection on a daily basis. Denying that is like flat earthers denying that gravity exists. It's that stupid. So they know it's a losing battle there. And abiogenesis is something that's a little bit more nebulous. We have not observed an abiogenesis event, right? That's true. You can say that. And our work over the past 70 years or so in understanding how abiogenesis could have occurred is certainly far from conclusive. We don't have a pristine roadmap of every step of the way of how abiogenesis must have occurred. We have many pathways. We have many plausible pathways for all of the different steps, but we've elucidated what the steps are. We have plausible candidates for all those steps. We're through systems chemistry understanding how molecular evolution was able to bleed into organismal evolution, how the first protocell arose. But it's very, very esoteric. It's much, much more difficult to understand than ninth grade evolutionary biology principles. So it's an easy target for creationists because they're the people that they're trying to convince with this rhetoric don't have any chance of understanding this research. They would have had a shot at understanding, Mendelian genetics and stuff like that, but not this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they got this one guy, and he just shouts like a preacher about how impossible it is, and he would know because he's a chemist. And because he is a chemist, they go, look at this one guy. He must be the most brilliant scientist of all time. And the creationists who prop him up literally call him, he's the best scientist in the world.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about, man? He is a scientist, unlike Michael Behe and Stephen Meyer. I'll give him that. He is a scientist.
Correct. Yeah. He's a published scientist. Yes.
But that's, so it's just, it's an argument from authority. You have to deconstruct that. And as you said, say, look, it doesn't matter what one scientist says. What one scientist says could be groundbreaking, or it could be anti-science propaganda. Yes. Same with any doctor, right? Andrew Wakefield or whoever, right? There are frauds within the scientific and medical community. So you can listen to what one scientist says, but you have to then inevitably compare that to what the entire scientific or medical community is saying. Right. And if they are all united in saying, that guy's a fraud who doesn't know what he's talking about, then he is. I'm sorry, that's it. Right.
And also,
I have a question here.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, when you say that, these guys are scientists, which they are working in universities. For example, Jim Stewart is in Rice University, Avi Loeb is at Harvard. Why don't you think that universities take action against these scientists?
It's a very good question. I mean, number one, Tour and Loeb are tenured, so the legality of getting rid of them based on optics, something as nebulous as optics, is treacherous. I don't think, if they tried to get rid of them, they would fight it legally and probably win and get a settlement. Number two, ultimately, I think Rice and Harvard don't care because they bring in grant money and eyeballs and prestige from the vantage point of the general public, which is a currency, right? It's true that like all the chemists at Rice are embarrassed by Tour and don't want to associate with him. He even admits that in one video. He's like, oh, you know, I go into a room and it gets quiet and everybody goes, oh, Tour is here. Like, he's just admitting that all of his colleagues hate him. Yeah. And Loeb is a disgrace. Avi Loeb is an absolute disgrace to astrophysics, and all astrophysicists are united in despising him. But so I don't pretend to know what goes on at the highest levels of bureaucracy at a place like Harvard, so I can't give a definitive answer. But I feel like to them, as long as they're pulling in, you know, eyeballs and grant money and stuff like that, that just outweighs the shame and the disrepute that they bring to the institution.
So going back to James Tour, so his arguments are usually, look how complex this thing is, and you know, you show me how it can be done. So you know, I am a chip designer, right? Computer chip designer. So right now we are making chips which have more than 100 billion transistors, right? If I go 50 years back, we did not know how to make chips with even, you know, 1,000 transistors. Mm-hmm. So at that time, if someone said, no, there's no way you can make 100 billion transistors on a chip, because how would you do this? How would you do that, right? Just because you have no knowledge today of how things was done, that does not mean it cannot be done. That simply means we do not know how to do it, right? So, you know, argument from ignorance is not a logical argument. That simply says we don't know how to do that. That does not, we know it happened because we see history, right? And so...
And it's much, much worse than that, because when we were truly ignorant of something, even though it's a logical fallacy, you could put forward an argument from ignorance and say, I don't know how we could do this, or how such and such thing is possible. It's much worse with him, because he makes that argument about things that are well understood and known. Exactly. He just denies them. He just basically pretends the entire field of systems chemistry doesn't exist. He didn't know it existed until I showed him in my content debunking him. And then his attempts to just kind of like brush the whole field aside, where it's really the fulcrum point from, like, on this physicochemical continuum from molecular evolution to organismal evolution. It's the systems chemistry is the field that inhabits that fulcrum part of that spectrum, where we have ribozymes, we have observed autocatalysis, we have ribozymes that are evolving by natural selection. Like, we're seeing very clear demonstrations of evolution by natural selection on the molecular level that completely dismantle this idea, right? This rhetoric of, no, there has to be life first, then evolution. It's not true. It's completely not true. And we're understanding the properties of these sets of molecules that can have led to the first protocell. So all they have is straw men, right? He will go so far, like he will show extant life. If we're lucky, a bacterial cell. If unlucky, a eukaryotic unicellular organism like yeast or something, and go, look at all these organelles and look at all these, what these enzymes are doing. It's crazy to think that this could just float. Yeah, because that didn't happen. That's the product of several billion years of evolution. And so it's so easy. Some of the straw men are so easy to debunk and expose, even for a layperson audience. Some of it is more sophisticated when he starts talking about chirality and some stuff. It's a little harder to break down. I still do it. I debunk 100% of his arguments. Some of it is accessible to lay people, some much less so. But when you can so consistently expose the fraudulence of somebody's talking points, they end up trusting you on the stuff that they don't understand, because they're like, you've demonstrated to me that the guy is lying, doesn't know what he's talking about, etc. So when you go past where I understand, I'm going to trust you anyway, because you've demonstrated your trustworthiness.
Another thing which I hear more from Pakistani creationists, I don't know whether Christian creationists have the same argument or not. It goes back to the experiment, and they say, well, now we know the experiment was wrong because it was not the right conditions, and when they ran the experiment with the correct, quote unquote, correct conditions, it didn't produce the same the nucleotides and all that. I tell them, do you think that no one ever created that or tried that experiment after that, right? It's been tried hundreds of times with better conditions, with better control, with better monitoring. We have a lot more sophisticated tools to know exactly what chemicals were, produced in those experiments. So people just lie, and common people, the people that they address, most of the people don't have the curiosity to sort of, do their own research, even though now with ChatGPT and Claude and all those, it's become much easier to do that. But there's just lack of curiosity on general public, which they sort of, depend on. And if people have a little bit of common sense, a little bit of, critical thinking, and I tell them, just give yourself a little bit of doubt and say, could I be wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Could there be a different answer to the same problem, right? Just trusting someone because he says or she says the thing that you like is not a good enough reason to just accept that person, right? There has to be a little bit of a critical analysis also.
More than could I be wrong, it's could these people be lying to me, right? Because nobody expects lay people to develop sophisticated scientific knowledge. They turn to figures that are lying to them because they get told the story they want to hear. They get the story they want to hear is the God that I worship is real. That God did the creation event the way that I want to believe it happened to make me special so that I won't die. All right. After death, I will live in the special magic place and have all the fun things that I want. Right. That's essentially it. And so that's why people react so violently to people debunking creationism, because they feel like you're taking away my innate divine specialness and my immortality in presenting science that debunks the myths that I've chosen to believe. So you have to poke holes in the credibility of these figures, right? You have to show them that these people are lying. They're just lying. When they whine about Miller-Urey, whining about Miller-Urey is the same as whining about Darwin. Like Darwin would not have any clue what's going on in evolutionary biology right now. He didn't even know DNA exists. Like he just he was the beginning of evolutionary biology, in the same way that Miller-Urey was probably the first experiment that would be considered origin of life studies. Right. It has nothing to do with what the field. It's just so unbelievably unrelated to what the field is today that people like the moment somebody brings up Miller-Urey, I know they can be completely discounted. It's just why? What are you talking about? Why are you bringing up this experiment from 70 years ago? It's irrelevant, you know.
Right. So, and also, I think to some extent it has become irrelevant now because now we know, asteroids have all the nucleotides, all the, amino acids. We have found ribose, although not the same.
Maybe not nucleotides, but definitely, we just found ribose, all of the amino acids for sure. The smallest building blocks can be taken for granted. They're formed so commonly that they form in outer space without a liquid medium for chemistry to occur. It's incredible. So
Christoph, is it okay if I slightly change the topic?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So I want to bring in Hassan into this conversation, and the starting point is this is probably a little subtle for our Pakistani audience, the debunking. So you have also debunked Sabine Hossenfeld, right? Who looks like a very legitimate, very credible scientist, right? So Hassan, I would want you to comment on that, and then we can continue our conversation on that.
I mean, do you want me to describe what he did, or whatever it is?
So I just wanted to change a little bit topic to something else now.
Sure. So the thing is that Sabine Hossenfelder is another example of a legitimate physicist who has, been on this route. And if someone doesn't know what she does, what she, she started by saying that particle physicists are lying to you. But now recently she has gone into this, alley where she says that all of science is fraud. And she also made a video on science communism and things like that. So, but she's not the only one, of course. I mean, there are people like Eric Weinstein who, say the same thing, although he's a mathematician, he talks about physics all the time. So that's the comment. But if you have some question, let me know. Gerard?
So, no, I wanted to just comment on that the impact of these people, Sabine, like Eric Weinstein, on the public about science is huge, right? So I wanted your comments on that.
Yeah, so there are very specific figures that are, there are figures within the oligarchy who have an agenda to polarize the general public against factual knowledge, essentially, against the scientific community, against centers of higher learning. And so this propaganda requires specific figures to disseminate. Eric Weinstein is not a physicist. He's just a podcaster and propaganda mouthpiece for Peter Thiel. That is known factually. He's been on the Peter Thiel payroll for 15 years or whatever. His job is to polarize, is to spew rhetoric on popular podcasts that polarizes the public against scientists and universities. That's his entire purpose in life. Over the past 3 years or so, Sabina, who had been a pretty popular sort of pop sci, I would say qualified as a science communicator, and was kind of explaining pop sci topics, so for a while was not problematic, then started to exhibit the exact same behavior as Eric Weinstein, and in ways that are so peculiar and so ultra specific to the propaganda of the oligarchs. Academia is communism, right? Like, not only lambasting the entire university system, which is where people go to actually learn things, but tying it to this other concept of communism, which is like a naughty word to that is thrown against any activity that threatens the hyper predatory capitalism that is in effect today. All of this kind of, and then she came to Eric Weinstein's defense after he got humiliated by Sean Carroll on Piers Morgan. Just all of this behavior made it abundantly clear. I don't trust scientists, all of these things, that she has 100% cashed in on this precise type of anti-science propaganda for money. Either certainly at the very least through audience capture and being rewarded by the additional eyeballs by public that is hungry for anti-science content. But I have at this point pretty famously hypothesized that she is also on Peter Thiel's payroll. I think Peter Thiel pays dozens and dozens of such influencers. I've received a bit of criticism for putting that forward, but I don't care. I think that it's true. It's a very specific and pernicious type of propaganda that I put a lot of effort towards deconstructing. Certainly both of the Weinsteins, but yeah, at this point I've made 4 or 5 videos on Sabina, and I'm very proud of that content because she was a character that was sort of on this fringe where when I made my first video on her, there were a lot of people who watched both of us and didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to hear, wait, Dave is saying Sabina's a fraud, and I got a lot of pushback, and then I had to make follow-up videos, and I definitely have taken a big chunk out of her following and dropped her down a couple of pegs in terms of credibility amongst the pro-science public, because and it's reflected in her more recent content. But this is a very, very insidious form of anti-science propaganda that is intended to polarize people against real experts, so that they will listen to whoever the state deems a figure that should be trusted, which is going to be Bobby Kennedy, anybody directly under Bobby Kennedy. That's it. So it's very much aligned with very specific economic and political agendas of the elites. And
so
I've been exposed.
I have a question here. So when we talk about people who are anti-science, what we can do to convince them is to show that the people that they are following are lying to them by showing evidence against their positions. But do you think that they care? For example, there was a very clear evidence, in the case of flat earthers in the form of final experiment. But flat earth is still a thing. I mean, even after that very evidence.
But flat earth is the absolute bottom of the barrel of the most delusional, most clueless, most idiotic people on earth. You do make a good point in that with any of these particular cults, there are people who will deny literally everything that you show them, but that is not universally true. I've had so many comments, so many emails saying, Dave, you got me out of the pseudo-archaeology cult. You showed me that Graham Hancock, all these other figures are frauds. Dave, you got me out of anti-vax. Dave, you debunked all the people on Joe Rogan that I thought were smart, and now I don't fall for that stuff anymore. It just, you can't go into it thinking, how can I have 100% success? Because you won't. You will not. But it's just a matter, like, we're not, like, we got to this point of science denial societally, globally, not overnight. It took decades and dozens or even hundreds of very particular charlatans peddling very particular narratives. And so we're not going to get out of it overnight either. What we need is many, many figures. I am one such figure. There are dozens of other such figures. We need many, many more people doing this particular brand of science communication to just slowly chip away, chisel away at this edifice, this very large pseudoscience edifice that is cropped up. And if we chisel away with enough fervor for long enough, it will erode, it will become unrecognizable, and it will go away. But it's going to take a couple of decades and very consistent effort on the part of a lot of people.
There's one more question that I want to ask here. So do you think that there are two kind of people in the anti-science crowd? One of those people, one kind of people are the people who hate science because, it contradicts with their worldview. And the other kind of people are people who are intimidated by science.
I think that almost anybody without a science education is intimidated by science. It's a very natural position to have. I'm intimidated if I look at under the hood of a car. I don't know what's going on in there. And I don't want, you do it, you fix it. I don't care. I don't know. I don't need to learn this. I think that's a very natural thing. And I think that, but not everybody that gets enveloped in these anti-science cults, number one, they're not all religiously indoctrinated, right? A lot of people are just like, oh, I'm raging against a big pharma or something. They fall for a narrative, and there are, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a lot of people in there that just genuinely thought, hey, this is the right thing. And if you can show them how they've been misled, they're actually quite grateful. And, wow, you like, I got ensnared by this charlatan and this narrative, and you freed me from that. So I get a lot of messages from people saying, yeah, you snapped me out of this way of thinking. So
that's great.
So there are some aspects of pseudoscience that are easy to see the motivations, right? So for example, when we talk about creationism, we see that comes from religious background. When we talk about, for example, environmental issues, right, global warming and all that, the propaganda against that, you can see that there are huge, organizations like multi-billion-dollar companies, fossil companies, who are funding campaign to create confusion. But then there are things where I don't understand what's the motivation, like physics, right? We just talked about it.
Yeah.
What's motivating people to, create doubts about physics?
The intent is to create doubt in scientific expertise in general. And it doesn't matter. It can be physics. It can be archaeology. Biology. It doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter because the general public does not compartmentalize science. The general public is not capable of thinking, oh, there are some archaeologists that are lying, they think, therefore we'll just disregard them. But the rest of science is safe. They don't think that way. They think, oh, arrogant scientists are lying all the time. So if you can get people to fall for some narrative that incriminates experts in a particular field, the net effect will be an overall distrust in science. And universities and et cetera. And physics is the most fundamental of all knowledge, right? It's about how it's so fundamental that it's bordering on philosophical. So if you can get people to reject empirical science in an almost philosophical way, right? They're really truly rejecting just empirical science in general. So yeah, that's the motivation from.
There's one question.
One minute. I have a follow-up question here that you can ask. So there's one area that is relatively safe from this, these kind of grifters, and that's pure maths. Do you think that in the future there can be some pure math grifters as well, like these?
That's a beautiful question.
There are ones that try to do that. Their channels are very small. They don't get a lot of traction. I'd say the most famous one is Terrence Howard with his 1 × 1 = 2 stuff. But they're largely ridiculed. I mean, I think that just things like arithmetic and certain aspects of math are so purely demonstrable because they're not even empirical, right? They're just implicit demonstrations of logic. So yeah, I don't really see too much, right? Like Terrence Howard saying 1 × 1 = 2 is a challenge to the most fundamental axioms of mathematics. And that's why he gets ridiculed by most people, right? There are a small handful of people that are like, he's a genius. It's like, no, he can't do 2nd grade math. But yeah, because also math is not like, math is human activity, but even lay people understand that mathematics is not like human derived, right? We're like realizing aspects that of logic that just exist implicitly, you know what I mean? Whereas like, you know, pharma making drugs, it's the unnatural thing that man made that poisons the people, right? That's a much easier sell.
But actually, when I said pure maths, I didn't mean like something like 1 × 1 = 2. I mean like some esoteric maths like topology, algebraic geometry, and we have precedents in the past of some people in the Middle East who said that pure math is the work of devil and we shouldn't do it. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that can that thing happen, something like that in the Western world, that pure, these kind of esoteric mathematical fields, they are like devilish. For example, CERN has been accused of, being the place where they worship the devil, that kind of thing.
Right. But that's particle physics. That's we're trying to open up the gateway to hell with our big machine. Right. Yeah, I mean, anything is possible. I will admit, as long as I've been doing this, I periodically uncover a new cult or thing or whatever it is, and I'm genuinely shocked by like what's the thing now? This is what they're saying now. It's boundless, right? The stupidity of humans is without bound. So anything is on the table, I think, probably.
Well, so talking about physics, one thing that even though physics in general is very much bound to reality because it's demonstrable and all that, but there one aspect of physics which is prime for pseudoscience, and that's quantum physics. And people have just run with equating observation effect with consciousness, and then people like Deepak Chopra who just make millions just saying whatever he wants to say or whatever he thinks people want to hear and make money out of it. So those are things where it's really hard even for genuine experts to sort of clearly define what's going on, because no one really understands quantum physics. But when we come to particle physics, it's just everything observable. It's hard to imagine why someone would create doubts about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, the quantum thing is very obvious. I mean, that's a cult for people who are not privy to any religious cult. It just has the same overtones, but they pretend it's scientific, right? I use the word quantum, so it's science. So you can heal yourself and whatever. And Deepak's looking not too good these days. So I don't know how well his anti-aging mystical abilities work. But yeah, I mean, with particle physics, I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? It's just, what are they doing? Oh, they built a big, I mean, you can do they built a big machine to open a gateway to hell. Or if you're not as far gone, you can be like Sabina and say, oh, they're wasting billions of dollars trying to build another machine, and science is stupid, so we shouldn't do that. You know what I mean? It just, there's so many tiers where you can get on. And the thing is that's really, I think, the biggest danger about Sabina or figures like her that are sort of on the edge of credibility is it's an opening. It's an opening to the pseudoscience pipeline where once you're in, then you can descend and become more indoctrinated.
Right. Yeah. So we are reaching the hour, and if it's too much and you want to stop, we can stop. Otherwise, if you have
another 10 minutes or whatever.
Sure. So One thing that regarding quantum mechanics, and Hassan is far better than me to comment on that. But one thing that really bugs me every time is science is limited by the terminologies that exist in our dictionaries, right?
Mhm.
I have to use the word observation to mean interaction of photon with electron,
Yeah.
right? But I say observation and I put a I over there, and we
Yeah.
say, and what happens due to that is, then when I say observation changes the state of electron where it is, right?
Right.
That doesn't mean the consciousness is changing it. That
Right.
the photon's interaction with it is changing.
Yes.
Right.
That is so difficult. And what sometimes I think is science is actually a process of trying to make sense of something that is not intuitive. I
Yeah.
see every day sun rising from east and going in the west. But my brain tells me this is not true. Sun is not moving. It's the earth. And same is with but what happens is the science that is on the frontier
Mhm.
is more dubious for the people to understand because the terminologies are very difficult for them to understand.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of the role of the science communicator is to just deconstruct semantics. As you just said, I think it is defensible that someone would fall for this interpretation of the observation effect, right? Because of what the word observation means, right? People think that we can look at a subatomic particle the way you can look out of your blinds and spy on the
Yes,
neighbor.
no.
And it's not.
Right.
That's not what it is. So you simply explain that, and I explain it in my book, and I explain it in my video.
Yes.
Quantum Mysticism is Stupid. That in order to observe a particle, you interact with it. You collapse the wave function. This is how it works, and that can be explained in a page or two. And so, people who genuinely want to understand this will listen to that and react to that and allow themselves to be informed by that. Because it's just the unfortunate aspect of linguistics that we can't always, right? We have to use the words that exist to describe phenomena, and sometimes there's ambiguity with the words that we choose to describe something, and observation is one such word. But yeah, I mean, providing factual information is not enough for science communication, but it's part of it. You have to do that first. You have to do much more than that. But I think an ability to convey factual information clearly and succinctly is the cornerstone of the toolbox of any science communicator's bag of tricks. We have to do a lot more than that, but yeah, I think that book
so one of the things,
an exercise in that.
Right.
Basically.
Go ahead.
So one of the things that becomes hard is anytime you tell someone, no, you're wrong because science says this, people become defensive. And so I think one trick that we have to learn, and I think I need to do a better job of that, is how do we go past their emotions? How do we get past their defense mechanism to sort of tell them that just because I could be wrong, they could be wrong, but we shouldn't make that as an issue of ego when we are talking about facts, right? I mean, facts are fact. So especially if we talk about creationism, or sometimes we even have stupid things like moon landing conspiracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to debunk, except that people who are bought into that, it's an emotional thing for them. So getting past their emotion is the real challenge, which still don't know how to accomplish that.
Yeah, I mean, there are two arenas here, right? There's a one-on-one conversation with a peer or a colleague or something where you would want to be more delicate. Maybe you go Socratic with it and you just very lightly poke from the outside of their the worldview, and kind of poke little holes in their worldview that hopefully they'll realize and expand upon on their own. And then there's the broader public discourse where pseudoscience is killing children. And in that arena, I don't care at all about anybody's feelings. I will bring a sledgehammer of facts onto the head of the general populace, and I will do it over and over and over again. And everyone's feelings be damned. I don't care. These are two approaches. There's just too much at stake too. There's been too much focus, I think, on being super polite and all of this. We're past that. I just think that we're past that. We need to bring an energy and a vigor to this that rivals the intensity of the people who have poisoned society with all this pseudoscience that is now murdering children. So I don't care when I'm making content for general consumption. I don't care at all about anyone's feelings. It's facts, reality. Don't care if you like it or not. That's different from if you're speaking to somebody one-on-one and you want to try to get under their radar, that you take a softer approach. But,
yeah, I want one more question before you finish it. So in your opinion, do you think that the job of a science communicator has become harder, easier, or is unaffected by the rise of AI?
Oh, by AI specifically. I think the first thing that comes to mind is this slightly positive impact in that you can, like Google or whatever search engine you're using will give you, and you can ask it a question and you'll very quickly get an AI response that's pretty digestible. And you can say, just like, you can take it has a very high batting average for negating pseudoscientific claims. For the most part, if you ask it, does homeopathy work or something like that, like the AI is going to spit back pretty factual responses. So I think that helps, I guess. Especially because people who fall into pseudoscience cults tend to also be tech bros that like worship Elon Musk and stuff. And so like, it'd be like, hey man, like this is what you wanted. You wanted AI to tell you facts, right? So here you go, listen up. I don't know.
Sorry, in your book, in a different context, you have addressed this question. I just wanted to. So, because your book came before the generative AI came. Boom. So you mentioned that in internet in these days, any information that you want in support of your argument is available there.
Yeah.
Right? So same can be said about ChatGPT or any generative AI. I could go over there and say, give me 5 arguments that support the fact that Earth is flat. And ChatGPT will not care that Dave-Farina thinks that Earth is not flat, so I will give it correct.
Right.
It'll give you the answer.
Yeah, there are ways to manipulate AI to give you some. Yeah, but if you like, it's just pooling together all of the information on the internet. And the thing is that lies and pseudoscience suit the very few, whereas truth and facts and reality suit the many, right? Yeah. Anytime that you're trying to manipulate the public into believing something that's not true for personal gain, that's a small sliver of the information that's on the internet. So the most generalized input-output with AI is going to be relatively fact-based. Can you manipulate it into giving you what you want to hear? Yes, you can. I mean, that's true. Yeah.
Elisa, do you have any question?
No, I mean, just a quick thing. You mentioned homeopathy. You know, in Pakistan, homeopathy is a big thing, right? So a lot of our time is spent debunking homeopathy, and it's difficult because people's argument is, oh, I've read it, it works, right? And that's something which is very, very personal for them. And so no matter how many facts we throw at them, their belief is that their personal experience, trumps all of that. So that way, debunking homeopathy, I've found is very difficult because it's not a fact thing. It's an emotional thing. But in general, I think with better education, people have started thinking about these things, and then I've seen that for younger generation, it's now a little bit easier to convince them that homeopathy doesn't work because it just doesn't work. Science tells you, right? It's just against basic science, basic physics, basic chemistry.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's becoming a little bit easier. But again, people experience is something that people put a lot of, stock in, and that's hard to then argue.
I mean, we shouldn't feel pressured to set a goal for ourselves to convince and convert every single last person. We won't. We're not. So we want to put a lot of effort to exposing charlatans and recovering as many people as possible who fell for those cults. We also want to inoculate younger generations against falling for this stuff. I mean, it's a multi-tiered effort, and 100% success is a very unrealistic goal that none of us should set for ourselves. We just do the best we can, and we just want to kind of push the needle a little bit at a time back in the right direction. Yeah.
So just a last comment. Based on what you have just described, I get the sense that despite Trump and Robert Kennedy Jr. and despite all the propaganda, you seem to be thinking that you see light at the end of the tunnel, and future is maybe bright, where more people will understand. Is that a right reading? Do you think we are on winning streak?
No, we are not on a winning streak. In general, I'm very, very pessimistic, actually. But the thing that the reason I retain a small glimmer of hope is that science communication is still a nascent field. So if you go into a party, like if I go to a party or something, somebody says, "What do?" I say, "I'm a science communicator." 9 times out of 10, they have no idea what I'm talking about. They don't know what that means. They don't know that that's even a thing. That's how new science communication is in the context of a career science communicator. Someone like me, who I don't do research, I don't teach anymore. I just sit around and think about how the public is interfacing with science, what they're getting wrong, how to address that, how to make content to help people understand. That is a brand new thing, and there are not enough people doing it. And I think that given the current political climate and how dire the situation is, more people than ever are realizing that not only it's a viable career path based on the success of existing science communicators, but also how incredibly necessary it is as a field. And so over the next few years, I predict that we are going to see like a tenfold increase in working science communicators. And I want to see what that does. I want to see what the gigantic influx into the field does, what that output looks like, and how effective that is in shifting public opinion. Then I'll reassess my optimism or pessimism.
Sure.
I'm holding out for that, basically.
So the impact of Western culture on the third world countries like Pakistan, India, and those things
is immeasurable.
It's huge. It's huge, right? I go to Pakistan and people convince me what political victimization we are doing is perfectly okay. You see, in your country, America, they do that too.
Right.
Yeah. And that then morphs into anti-science and everything else. And you lose the half of the battle right there.
Yeah.
Because
it's a tragedy, because what you would think is that in less developed regions, that they would see science as this light in the darkness to bring them into a more developed scenario. Like if the American empire is crumbling, which I think it is, that leaves the door open for other nations to step up and get a piece of the pie. But if they follow us down that road, then they won't do it. It's an opportunity for everybody in other countries, right? Like America used to suck up all of the brilliant scientific minds around the world. They would all come to MIT and Caltech and all this stuff, and they're not doing that anymore. Not only are they not coming here anymore, but brilliant minds from America are going elsewhere because of the anti-science, because of all the budget cuts first and foremost, but in general the attitude towards immigration and things of that nature. And so it's just this golden opportunity for all of these other countries, like obviously Germany and England, and other countries have been doing a lot of science for a long time, but there are plenty of countries in that tier just below that could rise in this situation, and if they follow American politics, they won't do it, and it's a tragedy.
So Karisa and Hassan, do you guys have any more questions?
I have one small question. Do you think that spreading pseudoscience should be criminalized? Not probably in this government, but next government.
It's such a good question. I think about it all the time in my weird brain where I'm like, okay, I'm president now. What would I do, right? Would I initiate any kind of legislature to criminalize? And I think the most I vacillated on this quite a bit. And I think I was thinking about this honestly yesterday. And I was like, you know what? I would go ahead and do this authoritarian, draconian measure that all of the people would go, he's the worst guy ever, and he's good, he's free speech, blah, blah, blah. I would just go ahead and do it, because it's like, I mean, Trump's authoritarian and we let him get away with it. So why can't we let someone have a modicum of authoritarianism in the correct direction, and criminalize pseudoscience and penalize people for spouting misleading information? I mean, I think there's a way to do it. You target the most dire, like the medical misinformation first, yep. Not necessarily like flat earthers or something like that. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like, obviously what I'm saying, like, I don't know what the right thing is to do, but like, what if we did that and you go very sequential and just kind of like, this is them, like Andrew Wakefield, you're going to jail. Pierre Corey, you're going to jail. Like, this is ridiculous. You have caused thousands of deaths. You're a horrible person. You're going to jail. And you just kind of start doing that. And honestly, you put 20 or 30 of those people in jail, I think people are going to start shutting the hell up pretty quickly.
So Dave, when you are president, can we also put Ken Ham in the jail too?
Yeah, Ken Ham. I think all you need to do is remove the tax exemption status of churches. So you start there, and then you make them all pay back taxes.
That will solve 90% of the problem.
That'll solve that problem. So
okay, so that's.
I think the other thing we could do is, even without changing anything, right? If there was enough evidence to prosecute these people, that someone said this, oh, don't go to doctor, do this instead, and that caused 30 people to die or 50 people to die. I mean, if a single doctor can be barred from practice for life because of one wrong decision, because of malpractice laws, I'm sure that there could be legal ways of showing people this is the consequences of that, and so you should pay $50 million damages because of your statements. It could be done that way also.
You'd have to have the Supreme Court stacked in your favor, because it would probably end up going that high. But that's what Trump's trying to do. Yes. Trump's trying to stack the Supreme Court in his favor to do any authoritarian, ridiculous thing that he wants to do, and make that legal. So I don't know. Maybe one day there will be someone in office that can wield that power for good. I'm not sure.
I mean, at least if it's not criminalized, then at least for example, YouTube shouldn't platform them. For example, people like Nick Fuentes cannot open a YouTube channel, and people who spread misinformation, they should not be able to.
Here's the problem with that, though, is that you cannot make, like, YouTube has very strict community guidelines centered around something like hate speech. Because that's very easy to identify, but YouTube cannot become the arbiter of what's scientifically true. It's just not built for that. And when you have pseudoscience that becomes so esoteric that it becomes like, that's not YouTube's job,
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Okay, so I think we are 20 minutes over the hour, and Dave, thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
It was absolute pleasure, and don't be stranger. Please. Come more often whenever you feel like having a conversation. Let us know. We'll set it up.
Likewise.